This episode is sponsored by The Alcohol Experiment, a free 30-day challenge designed to interrupt your patterns, give you control, restore your health, and put you back in touch with the version of you who doesn't need alcohol to cope, relax, or enjoy life. More than 220,000 people have already tried The Alcohol Experiment for themselves and have seen improved sleep, increased happiness, reduced anxiety, and so much more. Join thousands in this inspiring, hopeful, and exciting program where you examine your beliefs and reconnect with the best version of you without ever feeling like you're missing out. Start today for free at alcoholexperiment.com.
Hello, everyone. I'm Scott Pinyard, head coach at This Naked Mind, and I am back with another edition of Coaching Questions and another incredible certified Naked Mind coach. It's Coach Marilin. How are you doing today, Marilin?
I'm doing great. Thank you. I'm so glad to be here.
So your niche, you work with cancer survivors and people wanting to improve their health in general, and you work with Spanish speakers. I think you're actually the only coach right now that works in Spanish, I believe. So talk to me a little bit about that. Who are your clients and how do you work with them?
All right. Well, the first one is being a breast cancer survivor myself. One of the things that I did when after I had done my radiation and treatment is I wanted to find ways to make sure that there wasn't any reoccurrence. And so I started looking up things and going to workshops. And one of the things that you can control, obviously there's lots of things you can't, but one of the things you can control is sort of your diet and drinking. And I was like, wow, that's pretty interesting that nobody tells you about, the alcohol increasing the rate of breast cancer by, I believe it's 17% for 3 drinks a week or something like that. And so I was like, okay, then I definitely want to do that. And I would go to the workshops and everybody would ask the question, can we drink? And all the nutritionists would say, yeah, a glass or 2 here, there should be fine. It should not be a problem. And I think there was one lady that said, I drank and I got cancer again, and I wish I hadn't drank. And that was, everybody kind of went like, "Ooh, but that's you, that's not going to be me." And so I just thought that was pretty sad that even when you're going to these workshops to try to get some help out there, then they're still telling you that it's okay to consume alcohol, even in moderation, but still. So that's when I really kind of delved into This Naked Mind, and I wanted to get the best chances. And then my Spanish speakers is because I feel like when we assimilate here into this culture, drinking is part of this culture, right? And so there are, like you said, not a lot of coaches out there that can do some stuff in Spanish. There's actually another coach, Ginny, in Mexico.
Oh, right.
But her Spanish is not fluent. So she prefers to have like bilinguals and stuff. Mm-hmm. So, but anyway, it's mostly for people who've been in the country, in the United States for a long time and have assimilated to the culture, but kind of want somebody of their own culture, of their own Spanish culture, kind of to help them out with the drinking. And my group is called Sazón Sin Alcohol. And sazon is a little condiment you put on all food to make it taste great. So that's where it's like, the seasoning of life without alcohol.
I like it. Around the breast cancer stuff, I have to say, when we run a live alcohol experiment or people read the book, that is probably one of the things that we get the most comments about just being blown away by, right? Like people, it's just something we don't talk about. How, like, as you work with people, like how surprised are your clients to kind of hear that and understand that? And like, how do you work through that? Because I think for a lot of people coming out of a stressful situation, and cancer absolutely counts as that. It feels like, all right, well, that's the thing I'm going to reach for, right? That's how I'm going to deal with some of the stress. And I can only imagine, I haven't experienced it myself, but I can only imagine that's a big part of it. So how do you work through that? And like, what are some of the things that you find, or at least in your own journey, that were helpful for you to kind of get beyond that?
Yeah, I sadly drank through my treatment. So I can totally relate
Yeah.
to that whole stress situation. But it really helps, or it helped me to have my why, right? It was, I'm doing this to be the healthiest version of myself. And I want to give myself every possible avenue to not have a reoccurrence. And I need to put that, you know, front and center.
Mhm.
But like I said, nutritionists, my oncologist, all of these people, um, I've mentioned, I've quit drinking. None of them go, "Oh, that's awesome." They're, it's sort of like, just like, "Oh, that's good," but it's not really something that they recommend.
Yeah.
So you have to do, so when you tell people, um, either they know from their own research or they haven't been told and they're very surprised. Um, so having, your positive why and remembering that, when it's stressful and when things can get, you know, um, daunting, is to
Yeah.
remember exactly why you're doing this. And, I had a little bit of a time when um, I kind of questioned, well, why am I doing this? Because my mom, a year later, was diagnosed with the same exact breast cancer that I was,
Wow.
and it wasn't genetic. And
That's
she,
crazy. Wow.
yeah, it's totally crazy. And same treatment, same everything. And she doesn't drink. And I remember
Hmm.
talking to a coach going, like, I realized that for a long time I had been like, I deserve this because I was drinking so much.
Yeah.
And then, my mom got it. And so it was sort of a big eye opener, like, no, it doesn't matter what you did before. Anybody can get cancer, right? And so
Mhm.
to have that like grace for yourself, that you'll never know what caused it or what didn't cause it. And to, be nice, compassionate to yourself about that.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
So that was a big moment, a big shift in my thinking
Yeah.
about
And I
all of
think
that.
it's hard, one of the things, often, like, where, you already mentioned grace, but like we're science-based, sort of what we call compassion-led or grace-led methodology, which really like the square one for us is, it's not your fault, right, where you are with alcohol. There's nothing wrong with you. Alcohol is addictive to all humans. So we have to start from that place. But I feel like that must be hard if you're already thinking, oh, I had cancer and I've somehow contributed to it. But giving yourself that grace, and like you said, that realization of like, oh, anyone can get this, that's the beginning of real healing. Even though it feels like, I don't know, it feels like, I don't know if it's the right way to say it, but like you're almost letting yourself off the hook. That's not really what it is. What it is you did the best you could with the tools you had at the time. And I'm guessing it probably wasn't until after, when you were in those remission classes, that you found out that there's a strong link, right?
Right. Um, yeah, you just that nobody tells you.
Yeah.
And those conversations are just not happening in enough places until the people are already in it. And actually, somebody brought, like, I'm in various cancer groups, and they posted like, cancer diet, like cookbook or whatever, and
Yeah.
on it was a glass of wine. Like, it was like, things to cook and, to improve your health, and how they promote wine as healthy with,
Right. It's good for your
and so,
heart, right?
yeah, yeah. It's like, oh, so I'm out there trying to, get the word out,
Yeah.
especially for young people
Right.
who don't get to hear this, and of course, are not thinking I might get cancer someday.
Right.
1 in 8 women. So
Wow. Yeah.
so
Great. I'm glad you're doing this work, because I think that, again, like, it is something that we do need to get the word out about. You know, we hear so much about it, and, you know, and I could go on about this part forever, but like, we've known, this is not new news, right? That this link exists. Like, we've known, and actually the negative consequences of alcohol consumption are all around us. We see it everywhere, right? Everything from drunk driving to relationships, to health complications. So I'm glad you're doing this, because as someone who's been through it, being able to talk about it, and not only talk about it from the standpoint of being a survivor, but talk about it from the standpoint of like, let me help you work on your thinking, right? Here's the shift that I made. I think that's huge. That's really awesome. So
Thank you.
let's
Thank you.
let's dive into some questions. I got a few.
All right. All right. Good.
Here's question number 1. I am in a constant state of panic. I'm triggered by all the things that are happening in the world and my fear of not being able to stop drinking once I start. Seconds after I wake up, I feel the adrenaline, or maybe cortisol, literally coursing through my body, settling like a lump in my lower throat and chest. I want a night alcohol-free, as I'm sure the panic will be less the next day, but I can't manage it, and that adds to the panic. Plus, I'm carrying a lot of anxiety on my daughter's behalf. I know that doesn't serve anyone. And I don't know how to manage this physical and mental feeling. It is all consuming. How can I work through this?
Oh my goodness. I'm sure a lot of people are feeling like that through this pandemic. I know that I definitely did panic in some cases. But what I would tell this person is, breathe. First of all, take a few deep breaths. And it sounds like, you're aware of all the bad things that the stress is creating, the cortisol going through your body and all of that kind of stuff. And that perpetuation, that cycle of anxiety, drinking, and then that fuels your anxiety. So all of that going. But I would definitely do some kind of work in terms of like feeling those emotions and trying to process them in a way like I said, with deep breathing, going outside and just, when I heard the question, it's just grounding yourself. Like actually go out, with your bare feet, stand on the earth and kind of just to ground yourself. Feel that connection there, and try not to think too much of the future. I usually say anxiety robs me of the present moment, because you're worrying about something that may or may not happen.
Yes.
And so trying to stay present, what can I do now? And usually when I have my anxiety going, you don't think straight, because your reptilian brain is sort of like, I need to be safe. So what I ask myself is, am I safe right now? This second, am I safe? And if you can answer yes, in this second I'm safe, I'm wearing a mask, or I'm inside my house, I'm doing all this kind of stuff, then that helps your frontal lobe come into play, which is your thinking part of your brain.
Yes.
So now that you've quieted down your lizard brain that's going, I need to hide, I need help, this is, the world's ending, then you can go, okay, is that true? No, not right now. I'm safe. Let me think of things I can do. And so constantly helping, saying that to yourself throughout the day might be helpful to, sort of calm that down. If you can find anything like yoga or meditation, those are really helpful for me in terms of anxiety. And even just, I was hearing a podcast, somebody was saying, just dance for a minute, like get it out, like physically get that anxiety out. You might not feel like dancing, right? Because you're anxious, but just like jumping up and down and moving and trying to get the anxiety, and writing down things that helped, so that when that anxiety comes again, you can think about it and just take it 5 minutes at a time, if that's all you can manage.
Yeah. I think that's all really good. One of the things I see in this question, which is good news, is that there's an awareness of the anxiety.
Hmm.
And
Exactly.
that is often half the battle. I mean, when I coach people, I try to remind them when they're running into difficult thoughts and they're like, oh man, I'm really anxious about this. I like to remind them that the fact that they're aware that they're anxious, let alone that they're aware of what they're anxious about, that's massive, because once you have that awareness, you can actually do something with it. I totally understand feeling the anxiety for what's going on in the world, in whether it's pandemic or anything else. Like there's always a lack of certainty, but there are some times when I think that uncertainty is just in a certain focus that is scary. It's absolutely scary. And one of the things that is really, really helpful to me along the lines of, dancing it out, is expressing it, right? It's taking some time to write in your journal. And I can't really think of a single time that I've taken the chance to do that, where I'm feeling a certain amount of anxiety and I sit down for 10 minutes. It doesn't even need to be that long, and write out what I'm thinking and what I'm feeling. I can't think of a single time that I didn't feel better. Maybe it's not totally gone, but just the act of releasing it that way can make it so much better. The other thing that either writing or speaking about it can do is it can provide some clarity, because I don't know how you experience it, Marilyn, but for me, anxiety is it's I it's not like just like a single thought. It's this combination of like words and memories and sounds and like physical feelings, and it's all kind of jumbled, right? It's just this general like jumbled energy. And by having to use the structure of language, by having to like write it out in sentences, it helps me order that, and that can make it feel better. And ultimately, I think this, well, I know that this person is right in the sense that they know that an alcohol-free night would make them feel better. But the other flip side of this coin, and also what I'm seeing here, is that there's a lot of pressure to get to that alcohol-free night, you know. And the ironic thing, as I was mentioning earlier, we're compassion based, we're grace based. um you have to let go of some of that in order to actually get there. And I know it sounds like an oxymoron, right? So I'm not saying don't try to have an alcohol-free night, but let go of the fact that I have to do this to feel better. Because the fact of the matter is, you can take baby steps with this, right? So if you normally have 6 glasses of wine, what if you only had 4? In my book, that's a win. And I understand that there would still be some physiological effect from that, of course. The issues with adrenaline and waking up with a hangover are still going to happen. The difference, though, is that you'll be able to say, hey, I cut back. And sometimes, especially when we're in really difficult times, when we're really feeling a lot of stress or anxiety, it's really important for us to celebrate those small wins. And that's one thing that I've seen, in working with people. This was, I remember I was coaching someone a while ago, who was in a similar boat of just like, I've got too much stress. When I don't drink, I feel like I feel the stress more. And just giving herself permission to drink less, she knew it wasn't getting over that finish line of alcohol free that she wanted to get to, but she was able to drink, but not drink as much, and celebrate that small win. And that just led to momentum for her. Yeah,
Yeah, build on the successes of
exactly.
short period of time. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
cool.
great.
Let's go on to question number 2. Here it is. I'm struggling with my non-negotiable of not drinking at home alone. I'm having difficulty committing to it, and I'm slipping back into mindless drinking. I hate the aftermath of drinking, like the effects on my physical, mental, or emotional state, but I am still missing the first glass of wine feeling that really does feel relaxing, even though I know the truth about any subsequent glasses of wine. Please help me find strategies to truly commit to this non-negotiable. I'm still ambivalent about making this commitment.
Um, So I think what I would say there is, one of the things would be, it's going to be a trigger. Being alone in the house is going to be a trigger. So trying to change up your routine a little bit. So, if you want to, if you usually drink your glass of wine on the couch, maybe sit in a different spot, with another drink. And if you're going to drink, because one of the things I was thinking is really be mindful of, does that glass of wine really relax you?
Yes.
Or is it the thought of the glass of wine? As you're reaching for the glass of wine, are you already relaxed? And if you notice that that's the case, then maybe it isn't that first glass of wine. It's the whole routine that you have around, the first glass of wine, the time of day, where you're going to sit, what you're going to do, and really kind of be mindful about whether or not it's the wine that's doing that, or if it's the whole process. And if you find that it's the whole process, then you can start building a new routine that doesn't include the glass of wine. Maybe you watch TV in another room. I'm a big proponent of switching things up, because
Yes.
all of that environment is going to be a trigger. Your house is a trigger, right? And so, of course, you need to live in your house, but maybe do a new hobby, do a new activity,
Hmm.
um, and do it in a different place. And hopefully, as you're adjusting to these new hobbies and ideas, then your house will become less of a trigger to drink. And really, the main thing I think is really notice whether or not that first glass of wine is doing it for you, because I have a feeling it's the whole process and not just that glass of wine. And so be really mindful of what that glass of wine is really doing.
I love that. And yeah, I find that mindful drinking. So like if you decide to have that glass of wine, to sit down without television, without your phone, ask yourself, how do I want to feel when I drink this glass of wine? Pour the glass of wine, take about half an hour and drink it. And then check in with yourself again without distraction. What I find is, like, Marilyn, you're 100% correct in that people tend to say, okay, I'm really stressed out, I need this glass of wine. They're already feeling better when they're walking toward the cabinet, and they don't recognize it. And then on top of that, they start drinking the wine and they stop paying attention altogether. And then they don't realize that, and we talk about this in the alcohol experiment, they actually feel worse after that glass of wine than when they started. Now, it's one thing for me to say this, on a podcast or in a course or in a coaching session. It is a completely different thing for someone to actually experience it. And so that's why I think that mindful drinking is so powerful and so helpful, is that you can do it and, be honest with yourself. Annie did a version of it where she recorded herself as she went through the evening and had subsequent glasses of wine. The thing that starts to happen when we block out all of the other things we are experiencing, right? So this isn't like drinking wine and watching Netflix, or drinking wine at a bar and with other people around. Is we really want to isolate that variable of alcohol, and doing that can be super powerful. Now, I'm not going to tell the person who wrote in what they're going to experience, because that's going to be totally up to them. I can say, though, from my own experience and from other people that I've coached, it's not what we think it is, and the reality is, as we drink, our abilities to, really, well, as we drink, our abilities to think become diminished, and we just don't notice it until we make a point of doing it mindfully. Yeah. And, the other thing is, this person asked about non-negotiables. And this non-negotiable concept that we have in our program is really simple. Like, when you go to quit drinking, there are non-negotiables. There are behaviors I will no longer tolerate out of myself. And I'm wondering, if this non-negotiable of not drinking at home alone, if that should really be in the non-negotiable category, or maybe it's something that you're working on. And the reason that I say that is, just like the answer to the last question, there is such a thing as progress. right? You don't have to say like, I guess what I'm saying is there's a difference between I really don't want to do this thing, but it's hard for me to not do it, and a non-negotiable. If that makes sense. How have you handled, how do you handle
Well,
non-negotiables, Marilyn?
well, that's exactly what I was going to say. What's her reason for having a non-negotiable? So when I have a when I had a non-negotiable, I was, um, I'm not going to drink for while I'm grading. This was one of my non-negotiables, and I kind of delving into what's the reason for not drinking at home. Is it because, are you drinking because you're bored, or are you drinking because you're anxious about being home alone? Like, what, if you can kind of find what the reason behind that non-negotiable is, it makes it a lot easier to realize, am I just picking something just to pick a
Yeah.
non-negotiable,
Yeah.
or is there an actual reason for why I'm doing this? And like we said with the last question too, is those whys are so important to help you during those really tough situations, right? Where you're like, I really want to drink right now, but I said I wouldn't.
Yeah.
And trying to hone in on the exact reason why, I think is helpful for sure. So
Yeah. And non-negotiables are, they're tricky because we don't. So just to be clear, in a lot of cases, non-negotiables are things that, like, if we cross this line, then we're going to continue our experiment for another 60 days alcohol free. And it can be very good to motivate you to act in a certain way. However, it can also, in some cases, turn into a bit of a weapon, right? Where we beat ourselves up, which is exactly what we try not to do. And that's why picking a non-negotiable that is super difficult. Like, if your non-negotiable is, if I drink, I'm not gonna drink at all. Like, it does, you're creating a situation where you're gonna create tension, and where you're going to create
right.
a collision with that non-negotiable. And yes, I couldn't agree more with the idea of the why, and making that clear. And the one more thing I'll say about it is, really, when you're in that time where you're home alone, there's another way of looking at the why, is saying, like, how do I want to feel right now? Right. And it could be like, I'm tired, I want to go to bed, or I'm hungry, I want to eat something, or it could be I'm bored, right? Whatever that is, but getting underneath that urge to drink. What happens to us over time is alcohol becomes a solution for all different types of problems. And after a while, we actually get bad at even identifying what problem it is that we have. So it takes us an extra step, as we're getting used to this, to say, like, what am I actually looking for here? And asking yourself that question with your why in mind will help you kind of choose a different direction. So I hope all that's helpful to the person who wrote in. I know
Yeah.
it's very difficult when you feel like you keep breaking this promise to yourself. But if we start from the place of self-compassion, and give you the ability to make decisions here, instead of forcing yourself into something, it might feel a lot better.
And baby steps too. Like, maybe I won't have wine while I'm cooking. Like, maybe that's an easier non-negotiable than,
Yes.
or I'm not going to drink wine if I'm watching, a show, or if I'm reading a book, or whatever. Pick one thing, and then maybe keep adding. Once you're successful, you can keep adding more and more stuff to that.
I love it. Awesome.
All
We are
right.
actually almost out of time. So I'm going to
Okay.
skip the last question, and we're going to
Okay.
go to your curveball question. It's not that much of a curveball, though. I picked a softball for you, Marilyn.
All
Um,
right.
Here it is. If you could live anywhere in the world, where would it be, and why?
Definitely the beach.
Mm,
I don't, and I grew up in Puerto Rico, so I love warm weather. I love the sun. Um, and so that's like my happy place, being able to have a window that looks out into a beach. I don't actually like to go in the beach, but I like to walk along the beach, and
yes.
I like to look at the beach. I have not yet been to a lot of places, but anywhere in the Caribbean would sound lovely. So if I never have to wear a sweater again, I'd
You'd
be
okay with that?
I'd be completely happy.
That's awesome. Thank you, Marilyn. And thanks for hanging out. This was great. I really
Yeah,
appreciate
it was
your
so much
time.
fun. Thank you, Scott.
So if people want to find out more about you, what is your website? Where can they go to read more?
So like I said, it's Sazon, SAZON, sin alcohol, .com.
Awesome.
That's
Thank you
where they
very
can find
much.
me.
Very
Thanks,
good.
Scott.
And thank you to those of you listening. I'll be back again with another episode of Coaching Questions very soon. We'll talk to you later. Take care.
Let me ask you a question. What is better than change? Lasting change, of course. And if you've had trouble making change stick, either with alcohol or in any other area of your life, you are in for a treat. I created the 100 Days of Lasting Change to ensure that we don't just change for a moment, but we truly transform for a lifetime. And this program is so close to my heart. Thousands of people have been through it and their results are incredible. But don't take my word for it. Check it out at thisnakedmind.com/100 days. And as always, rate, review, and subscribe to this podcast as it truly helps the message reach somebody who might need to hear it today.